in some places that is very hard. That's not easy. It's not just an easy thing to do this, but actually that's what our teams are doing, and that's what they're really skilled to do, out there on the ground. The other thing is also, of course, the question of fraud. I mean, you'll know if you followed particularly what happened with Pakistan and the fraud we had there, that first of all, we're always very public about this when this happens and when we're investigating, partly for transparency, because that's a sort of fundamental belief of the organisation, but also because it actually sends a signal that we take it very seriously indeed, and will actually investigate, and we will track down where the money's gone, and we will take people to court. I mean, sometimes in some of the most difficult countries there are issues about, well, what would happen if we, they were taken to court? I mean, it's not. There are one or two occasions when I can think, well, actually, that was just too dangerous in what might happen to them in proportion to what was done. But actually, we're very, very serious in actually following all this through and absolutely screwing it down. So, but I hope that's come through very clearly, actually, from the staff that you've seen today, just how much people worry and watch that through. But of course, the best way of knowing actually does the money get there is because you can see, you can see it being delivered. That's the key. Now, the easiest part of that, of course, is always in our humanitarian work, where we are doing more, if you like, service delivery. You can see water coming out of taps. You can see latrines being built and so on. And that's what when you get our annual portal, you look at it online, of course that's where you can see the numbers of people we have reached. And we know that because you can see the stuff there, and actually if we were saying things were happening, and the communities would be telling us if these things were not being done that we had committed to. That's sort of easier for when you're doing almost physical things. It's much easier to see. Now, the big challenge for Oxfam and other agencies that we've been working through in the last few years is, okay, but real development goes a long way beyond that. You know all the Oxfam messages about we want to have people who are taking control of their own lives, feel empowered, don't feel oppressed by all the shocks that are hitting them. Now, those things are the real part of development, and of course they are much, much harder to measure. And ultimately, what we're saying really is the only way you can know whether you've made a difference is by asking the people themselves. They're the ones who can tell you if those things have really made a difference to their lives. So in the last few years, we've been working up ways to look at what are called outcomes. What is the outcome of what we're doing? And we only have a small set of about 9 items really on that, but they are the things that we actually care about. They're not just target things to be measured, maybe because we're being asked to do that by one or other, the donor governments that give us money. They're things that we really believe are actually about development. And I'll give you 2 examples. One is actually asking people about, did you feel more able to cope with shocks this year than a year ago? Now, you can never say out of that Oxfam caused that. We keep saying we can't prove that we were cause and effect. What we're saying is, if we look at what we did, and those communities say they are feeling different, you might say we made a contribution to it. It's not that we did it all by any means. The people will have done it. Other people who are around are very likely to have helped in that. But was there some difference, and can we see that we contributed to that? Another example of that is, as we know about women's role in the countries where we're working, and have we made a difference to women's role in decision making? We work on that in cooperatives, we work on that in terms of local government, we work at that at the household level. So one of the questions that we're asking women in this case is, are you having a greater say in decision making than you were a year ago? Now by doing this, we're now really learning. Because, and I'll give an example that really rather shocked all of us, was in Uganda, in Karamoja, when we did this survey set of questions, what we found out was that the women said, in community discussions, we feel we're having a greater say in decision making. Fantastic, thank goodness. The second part of the question was, are you having a greater say in decision making at the household level? And the answer came back, no. So we hadn't achieved what we wanted to achieve. That's good. it's not good that we didn't achieve it, it's good that we know we didn't achieve it, because that says, well, we now can look at our programmes again and say, well, we achieved it at the community level, what more do we have to do if we want to see that translated into decision making at household level? So this is the sort of work that we're doing now that is really looking at, you know, how we can know we have delivered what we said we're going to deliver. Is it making a difference in that real development sense? And you know, that's really, I think, a fantastic, you know, way forward in what we're doing. I'll add on one more bit because I see Bob, our finance director, standing at the back, and he reminded me I ought to put this in, a good finance man. Value for money, he said. And he's quite right. The other piece of work that we're doing is not just looking at, did the money get there, did we achieve, but actually did we achieve it in the most value for money way that we could. And of course we're being pressed by donor governments again to look at that very hard, and we are doing that. And of course the thing is not necessarily always to be the cheapest. It depends what you're trying to achieve in that. And we sometimes are having to fight back and say, actually, okay, so whatever group said that they could get water to people, actually, you know, more water per head or whatever for the amount of money. But actually, it then turns out that they weren't doing any hygiene education in that. So it actually wasn't making the difference that people wanted to. So all the time you have to look into this to say, what are you measuring? But just looking, even just the straight differences in figures is fantastic, because what's beginning to happen is country teams in different places are saying, well, I don't quite see why it's so much more expensive to do that in the Congo than it is in Sudan. There's sort of similar environments. What's going on? And it's all that questioning that will really help us to be even more effective with the money we've got. So that's what we're doing, but a little comment about the wider corruption issues. Because, of course, I mean, in a way that is fundamental, again, to what Oxfam's work on the ground is trying to do. We want people to hold their own governments to account. It doesn't have to be through the sort of, you know, democracies in government, but actually just the demand, actually, of people who have power over them for delivery, and ask them the questions about where the money has gone. That's an incredibly important part of what we're trying to do in building up civil society, local NGOs in countries, etc., and even parent-teachers associations, is to actually enable them to ask of their local government or national government, you know, all that money that's coming on oil, you know, where's that gone? Or that money that was meant to come down to our schools, where's that gone? We've only got one teacher, we ought to have two. All of that is about actually empowering people to ask of their own government, so they're not dependent on people like us to come in and ask those questions. So the corruption thing is by no means cracked, as you know very well indeed, and we can't do the whole of that. But we do have some ways of trying to perpetually, in what we're doing, try and build up local people through organisations or just as individuals to be able to demand that of their own governments much more, so that, you know, ultimately, you know, that we do actually push out that corruption. I have to say, and I'm not sure I should say this online actually, but I've been fine in a closed room, but sometimes people say to me, well, what are you going to do in countries like Zimbabwe or wherever? And are you in for regime change? And I say, well, not officially, but actually, if you look at what we're trying to do with local civil society, it is actually helping build up people's capacity so they can speak for themselves and get the governments that they want as well. So that's probably quite enough for me to finish off this afternoon. It was just a sort of, I wanted to reassure everybody that, you know, I mean, you can go out and tell everybody that their money is getting out there and we're chasing down every penny if it's not. It's been, as I say, fantastic having you here. Just to say what will happen to all this stuff, we've got the flip charts that you produce in the different discussion sessions. All those will be summarised. They will go into the different bits of the organisation where people can really work with the things that you've been saying. We will get those back out to you so you know that we know what you've said and summarised all that. Like this year, of course, we'll feed back, you know, to you and into the wider system about what we did with those things that you've been telling us. Once again, you have said quite a lot about communication, and we will keep working on it. But I think you've come up with some, you know, really rather good ideas in some of these things about things that we can do better, including one from one of our younger activists who said to me, the thing is that, which is absolutely right, that we have to use, you know, digital technology now really well to make sure we get the voices of the people we're working with out and about. That is the most powerful way that we can do anything. So With that, the only final thing that you have to do before you leave is to find that evaluation form and scribble down a few notes at least for us so that we know what you thought, so we can make it even better next year. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Really good luck with all your work. Yes.